guys, so for those of you who read my blog, you know that I teach Legree fitness classes at a studio called B-Tone in Boston. And Legree fitness is done on Megaformer machines, and quite a few of the exercises are done in a tabletop position. So over the past 3 years of teaching, I've seen every way to do those exercises right and a lot of creative ways for doing them wrong. So I thought it'd be helpful if today we went over 3 of the most common errors I see when doing a tabletop exercise. First mistake I see a lot is just losing connection to the core. So you're so focused on the butt or the hamstring or whatever you're working that you kind of let your belly flop down and the back starts to arch. So especially with anything where the leg is moving up, your core should be held in tight, ribs gently squeezing together, belly button zipping up, so you're kind of thinking tabletop spine, and then you would do the movement from there, whatever it may be. Maybe the arms involved, like that, holding steady through the spine. But what I see a lot is this position, which feels great if you're in a yoga class or trying to stretch out your back, but this is not the ideal position if we were doing a donkey kick or a lift out to the side, whatever the exercise may be. So one reason people do this, first, just they're not thinking about their core. They're so focused on the butt or whatever the target muscle group is. But another reason people do it is because when we arch the back, we can actually get a bigger range of motion for some movements. So watch, if I'm letting my back sink down as I lift my leg, I can get my leg a lot higher. But a bigger range of motion is not always the best thing. It does not always mean you're doing the exercise better. Sometimes it's actually worse. So if I really hold my abs in tight and do it, I might not get my leg up as high, but I'm more effectively targeting the base of the seat. When I'm doing this, it's all low back. When I do this, it's smaller, but I can feel my glutes working harder. So that's the first thing. Be conscious of your core. You want to hold it in tight, tabletop spine. Squeeze the ribs together gently, belly button tucked in, and there's no sagging of the back down to the floor. Second mistake I see a lot is leaning over to the opposite side. I see this especially if we're doing any sort of tabletop exercise where one of the legs is coming out to the side. Maybe it's a fire hydrant, maybe it's a straight lift. The tendency is to lean over into that opposite side. So let's stare at my butt while I demonstrate. So I'll just do a fire hydrant so you can see. Really common as the leg lifts up to lean into that outside hip to counter the movement. You don't want to do that. Now, it's not about not feeling it in the opposite hip because the supporting leg is working, but it's working to keep the hip steady. So what you want to see is this, not this. So a couple tips for doing that. The first is to, and this is kind of an advanced version, but to take that opposite hand off of the floor altogether. So if every time you do this, you're leaning over to the side, if you take away that supporting hand, you can't lean over quite as easily. It's going to help you keep your body weight centered. Now, if taking the hand away altogether is a little too advanced, you can try extending it out to the side and just tenting your fingertips. So as I lift that leg, I have this hand for support, so I'm not as likely to add that lean over there. So again, tented fingertips helps a lot. Or advanced version, you can take that hand away altogether, but you don't want to be doing a little side lean. The third form error I see a lot is uneven hips. I'll show you from my forearms. Hopefully you'll be able to see it best this way. Now you want both hip bones to be the same distance from the ground in most exercises, not all. Always listen to your fitness instructor because there are some occasions where you would want them to be uneven. But let's just talk about when we want them level. So when you have both knees down, obviously the hips are going to be the same distance because your thigh bones are the same distance. When we lift one leg up though, sometimes what happens is we either roll open this way, or especially if we have an ankle weight or a tension on this foot, this hip bone will drop down. So now one hip bone is closer to the floor than the supporting. So just think of leveling off your hips, squeezing through the glutes, and trying to keep those hip bones equidistant from the floor the whole time. Notice if you're caving into one side, or rather opening up. You don't want that. So just to make things extra confusing for you, those tips are not always going to apply. I don't expect you to keep a flat tabletop spine when you're in a yoga class and the instructor's encouraging you to really stretch out and articulate the spine. So you always want to listen to your instructor. They're going to be your best gauge for what you should be doing in an exercise. But those are 3 general form errors I see a lot and things to keep in mind when you're doing any sort of tabletop exercise. Abs in tight, don't lean over to the supporting leg, and make sure that your hips are level to the floor. If you have any questions, leave me a comment. If you're a fellow fitness instructor and you want to chime in with some tips of your own in tabletop exercise, add them below in the comments section. And if you visit my blog, pumpsandiron.com, I've put together a collection of workouts I've done in the past that use tabletop exercises so you can take your new form knowledge and put it to good use.